Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started now. I think we will have a few folks joining us here as we go. Again, just a few login difficulties there. So my name is Michael Hunt, and I am the Director of Title IX Services in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Texas Lutheran University. I use he, him pronouns. And I'm joined by...
Hi, I'm Hannah Klug. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist and Sexual Assault Advocate with the Guadalupe Valley Family Violence Shelter. I'm also the Campus Advocate at TLU. So Michael and I work closely, and we work on issues of prevention and outreach on campus.
That's right, that's right. And tonight our two agencies, Title IX Services and the Guadalupe Valley Family Violence Shelter, I'd like to welcome you to a community program entitled Sexual Violence Response, a Coordinated Community Effort. It is part of our community's Sexual Assault Awareness Month and Child Abuse Prevention Month programming. So thank you all for being available to attend today. Our panelists tonight are Renee Billings, Crime Victim Liaison at Seguin Police Department, Michelle Meehan, Assistant Director of the Guadalupe County Children's Advocacy Center, Abby Whitaker, Assistant County Attorney and Prosecutor in the Guadalupe County Attorney's Office, and Anna Trujillo and Cherie Perez, Victims Assistance Coordinators, also at the Guadalupe County's Attorney Office. This program will include discussion of sexual violence, especially sexual assault. If this topic can be triggering for you, feel free to leave the meeting at any time and take a break for however long you need. The Guadalupe Valley Family Violence Shelter, the TLU Counseling Center, TLU Care are all resources available to you if that might be something that you could take advantage of. So we encourage you to reach out to those resources and to your own support network as you are able. We'll follow our panel discussion tonight with a short question and answer period. We encourage any questions that you may have via the chat or also the Q&A feature as well. If you would like to submit your questions anonymously, you can do so sending a message directly to me, Michael Hunt. So I do also want to let you know that we are recording tonight, so we can make this available to those who could not attend. So with all that housekeeping aside, thank you all for being here tonight. And I will turn it over to Renee Billings to start us off and tell us a little bit about about what she does.
Hi, as Michael said, I'm Renee Billings, Crime Victim Liaison here at the Seguin Police Department. My job here as the Crime Victim Liaison is to support and provide helpful resources to victims of crime, whether it be family violence, sexual assault, physical abuse, neglect, assault, ag assault, adult molested as a child, homicide survivors of victims, stalking, harassment, kidnapping, robbery, and human trafficking. Basically want to make sure the victim or family is safe and have the resources they need to help keep them in the loop so that they don't feel re-victimized. I assist with helping fill out crime victim compensation packets, register for VINE, victim notification every day, law enforcement accompaniment, medical, crisis intervention, counseling, death notification, lodging, and children's advocacy center accompaniment. I work closely with most of these ladies. Michelle, I help coordinate with her she assists me in setting up forensic interviews for children, whether they're witnesses to crime, domestic violence, or they themselves are victims of sexual assaults. I want to make sure that everybody knows that there are resources out there, and again, who to contact. And I am here to help assist victims if you don't feel safe or feel comfortable going on campus to the TLU.
Okay, thank you, Renee. We will turn it over now to Anna.
Hi, my name is Anna Trujillo. I'm with the Guadalupe County Attorney's Office. I'm the Victim Assistance Coordinator at the misdemeanor level. but I also do assist with protective orders. So in reference to sexual assault, I do help with those. So kind of getting into it, if that's where we're going, is the protective order process can be a little bit scary sometimes because it is the first interaction that a person has with either law enforcement or our office. And so I try to make it as easy and comfortable as possible, because sometimes when they come to us, it is the first time that they're talking about this, or they've just come from law enforcement to come, apply for a protective order. So I do work very close with Renee and the Family Violence Shelter, depending on where the survivor is coming from. So in reference to the protective order application, it is an application process, and it is something that gets staffed with our prosecutor, and they are the ones that make the decision if we're able to go forward on the application or not. If we are able to go forward, we will do everything in the office as far as an affidavit goes, getting reports, getting everything ready to staff for a hearing. And so our ultimate goal is to get that final protective order and making sure that the survivor is protected at all times. Sometimes it does take a while for a final order to be reached, and that can be a little bit or a lot disheartening to a survivor when, it may be a month, it may be a couple of months to get to that final hearing, but reassuring them that they're always going to be protected, and that if these orders are violated, that law enforcement can assist and can get involved, and that our office will always be in the know. And so another thing is that, again, it is an application process, so it's not always a guarantee, but that the survivor can always go through a private or a hired attorney to obtain a protective order, or an agency that the Family Violence Shelter has those resources. So that's something that I will always vocalize, and we will always do our best to make sure that, just because one says no doesn't mean that we can't get something done. And so with all of that, and going into a hearing, once we're able to actually get a protective order in place, so on the hearing date pre-COVID, we were able to bring in the survivor into our conference room, making sure that they feel safe at all times, even having our investigators walk them to and from their vehicle. During COVID, things have obviously changed, and it was on Zoom. That doesn't take away from checking in with them before and after, and even during the hearing process, to make sure, hey, is this what's going on? How are you doing? And always keeping them updated. And that, I hope, is as reassuring with the process, because sometimes, they do see the offender on Zoom or in court, and it can be a trigger, but we try to make them feel as comfortable as possible. So hope whenever post-COVID is, or after that, if we are able to bring in the survivor back into our conference room, we are going to pick back up where we started, and making sure that they feel safe, that even if the offender is in the courthouse somewhere, that they will not have access to that person, that we will always be there for them in one way or the other. The biggest thing to stress is the timing of a final protective order. Like I said earlier, it's that it takes time, and even though it could be a month or so, they're always going to be protected, and we'll always reassure them about that. Because our goal is to get them to that final order and being involved as much as we can. And that takes place with our prosecutor, with Abby, and with Cherie, because these cases end up going to these wonderful ladies. And so we want to make sure that the survivor knows that from the beginning, we're going to make sure they're okay and see it all the way through.
Thank you, Anna.
That's on my end.
Thank you, Anna. I appreciate that. And you're right, you all are wonderful ladies. So, all right, Abby, we'll send it on to you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Abby Whitaker. I'm an assistant county attorney. I do family violence and adult sexual assault. One thing I do want to add on to what Anna was just talking about, we have it structured in our office so that if someone does come in for a protective order, the same prosecutor that would ultimately get the criminal case handles that protective order. And so once somebody is already familiar with that case, familiar with those people involved, there isn't a new prosecutor that has to come along and learn it all over again. And so we try to do that, so you have a point of contact, that can be familiar and known. You start talking with Anna about protective orders. There are some situations where you might end up talking to Cherie also, but we also try to coordinate within the office so that you don't have 5 different people calling you about the same thing and you're feeling overwhelmed. So, but I would say primarily my job is prosecution of criminal cases. And we think about sexual assault, and there are, a big range of what qualifies as sexual assault under the penal code, but there are also a lot of other sexual offenses as well that we do prosecute. There's a fairly new offense that the legislature passed, I believe, last session, which is called indecent assault. And that doesn't rise to the level of, you think of like the violation of a sexual assault, but it's unwanted touching for the most part. Where we used to have, for a long time on the books for children being touched inappropriately. There's now a similar statute for adults. And it is a misdemeanor as compared to a felony, but that's something that before wasn't anything. It was a Class C assault of unwanted touching. And now if it is in a sexual nature, we can bring that to a higher level and get some more accountability. There's also harassment. And a lot of the sexual harassment has been kind of recodified into newer laws that they've done recently. But harassment, and I think a lot of people get confused about that. The way the Texas statute is written about harassment, it's very narrow, and it really is focused on electronic communications. And so for sexual harassment under the statute, it's sending electronic communications that are about sex, or asking for it, talking about it in an unwanted, unconsensual manner. Like I said, some of that's been recodified. We have some new laws, the unlawful disclosure or promotion of intimate visual material. That's where someone's got a picture of you, and it's, if you don't get back with me, I'm going to send this to your mom. If you don't do what I want, I'm going to send this to your boss, and that's illegal. And you could make those reports, and those will be investigated. If they're using fake numbers and stuff, that can be harder, but often it's somebody, who it is, who has that picture, who's making that threat. And the same with the invasive visual recording. That's, someone's recording an intimate experience or taking pictures without your knowledge. And so that doesn't even have to be a threat that they're going to distribute it, but just that they did it is criminal. And so often that comes to light now when they're threatening to expose it, or they have exposed it to other people, outside of the relationship. And so those things can be investigated and prosecuted. You also have when, I don't want to use the slang, but when you receive a text message or a picture of an unrequested, unwanted picture of genitals, that's a crime now. In your DMs, in your text messages, if you didn't ask for it, that's a crime, and you can report that as well. There's also kind of the old ones in the book, voyeurism. That's like, you think of like the peeping Tom outside the window. Someone's peeking in your house, in your dorm, in your friend's house. If someone's looking into a home in that kind of creepy, sexual manner, that's a crime, and that can be prosecuted. You also have, a whole range of sexual offenses involving children. That's, I think, a completely different discussion, would take a lot longer. But if, be aware of that, if there are children in your lives, if they come to you with that sort of thing, that is something very serious you want to make sure you address and get to the proper authorities about. One of the things I think we've seen an uptick of, just with technology taking off, are kids sending each other, nude pictures. and with people being under 18, that is, triggering of child pornography laws, kids thinking they're just being silly or whatever, and could really get in a world of hurt. And so just something to think of, if you're sending or receiving images of people, children under the age of 18 years old, that's not a good thing, and you should not do that. So kind of like the criminal prosecution process, we start with intake, and at intake, our office does not investigate. We rely on our local law enforcement agencies to investigate crime. However, especially with sexual assaults and certain crimes, we do work closely with law enforcement during that investigative process in the beginning to make sure we're getting all the evidence we need, that we're staying on top of everything, and making sure that when the case ultimately does come to our office for prosecution, we have everything we need to go forward. And like I said, we might work with the CAC. If there are children involved, we might work with the shelter. If, they're helping a survivor get services, and, helping them through the legal advocacy program that they have about, helping them come to our office and fill out forms and come to court and stuff like that. Early on, there are a lot of kind of back and forth as all the pieces come together. And then we make a charging decision based on the available evidence. And I think a lot of times people can feel frustrated if something happens and it doesn't get prosecuted, or it gets prosecuted at a lower level of offense than they wish. And sometimes it's just, it's not that we don't believe what happened. It's not that we doubt it. It's just we have to have a level of evidence to prove to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt what happened. And in some situations that can just be very hard. And so we try to have those conversations and explain to the person, this is why we have to do it this way, so that, we're not trying to hide anything. We want to be upfront. We want to be open about what's going on. And it can be hard to hear that I can't prosecute this case because there's not evidence, where, as that survivor, you feel very strongly, well, clearly there's evidence. And it's just a matter of perspective, I think. And it can be very hard when you're experiencing this horrible thing that's happened to you, to be able to take that objective look at what other people will perceive when they hear, the facts of what happened. And then the other thing too, especially on sexual assault cases, we often have DNA analysis, and the labs are just very backed up. It can take a very long time to get DNA. And so often it can take a year or more to even file a sexual assault case, waiting on those DNA results. Once a case is indicted, it's not like TV at all, unfortunately. It doesn't happen quick. As soon as a case is indicted, if we know where they are, then their court dates will start immediately. If we don't, there could be a warrant open for someone for quite some time before we pick them up and bring them into court. And then once the court process starts, it's getting them an attorney, whether they're going to hire someone or have a court-appointed attorney. It's then the state getting all the discovery to that defense attorney. It's all the reports, the statements, videos. There are some restrictions, and we redact personal information. We don't share CAC videos as far as giving copies. Like, there are some protections to make sure that as we give all this information to the defense, we're protecting the privacy of our survivors as best as we can. And then as things happen, new information may come to light, and we have to reinvestigate this or request extra over here. And so just that discovery process can take a long time. And then once we get through all of that, we're talking about plea agreements, and some defendants, some offenders, they're willing to take a plea agreement early on. Some just aren't, and some are never willing to take a plea agreement, and we end up getting set for trial. Once a case is set for trial, the priority goes to those offenders who are in jail, and then after that, it's age of case. So the oldest cases go first. Preference is given to offenders with child victims. And so there's our priority. And so sometimes it can feel like you're just waiting forever and ever and ever, and we just keep calling you and telling you about a reset month after month, and that can feel very disheartening, very frustrating. But that is the nature of the beast. And like Anna said, we do our best to keep you informed, keep you feeling okay with the process, but just know that it can take a long time. And then in the event when we do eventually get to a trial, we do our best to make the person as comfortable with the trial process as possible. Most people, the closest they come to setting foot in a criminal courtroom is watching Law and Order, watching the TV. And we never want someone to set foot in a courtroom the first day for the first time when they're going to be telling about the most horrible thing that's happened to them. And so we'll have, come into our office ahead of time. We go look at the courtroom, sit in the witness box, get comfortable with where everyone's going to be, how everyone's going to move around, what kind of questions we're going to ask. We can even do, we call it mock trial, but, practice question and answer, all the kind of just different little quirks that happen in a courtroom, try and do our best to get you used to that so that isn't new and frightening on top of having to give the testimony, answer any questions, that sort of thing. And also, try and prepare you for what kinds of questions the defense attorney will ask, because they will often just ask inappropriate questions and upsetting questions. And even if they're legally allowed, it just feels bad. And so we try and, prepare for all of that, so you aren't caught off guard. Outcomes, I think, there's a statistic at some point, and I haven't looked it up recently, like 95% of cases plea bargain. And I think that's still probably pretty true. And a lot of people, you think it's either they go free, or they go to jail. And there's a huge range of stuff in between that. I would say for most misdemeanor offenses, people are getting probation unless they have, been convicted of a lot of crimes. Most misdemeanors are going to get probation or a time served deal where they are going to get that conviction on their record, but they're not going to spend a lot of time in jail. We also have pretrial diversion programs. Now, when we're talking about sexual offenses, I would think we're not offering pretrial diversions on those, just because of the nature. It's a more serious offense. But if it's something where our survivor, is requesting that the person not be punished, or we always take that into consideration, or saying that they want them to be punished, we take that into consideration as well. There's a deferred probation where they go on a normal probation, but they don't get a conviction up front. They only get the conviction if they screw up. Regular probation where they are convicted and then on the probation, jail time, and then prison time for felonies. Also, though, on felonies, many people do get probation, even for very serious crimes. And it just depends on a number of things. It can be the nature of the offense, the strength of the evidence, the criminal history of the defendant, the level of cooperation of the victim or survivor, or any other witnesses involved in the case. And, it can look great at intake and everything looks great. And then you come to trial and someone has moved out of the country, or somebody else has changed their mind and doesn't want to have anything to do with it anymore. And, we can issue a subpoena and drag that person into court, but we can't force them to sit up there and tell the truth in a helpful manner. And so there are many things that affect the prosecution of a criminal case. And there are times when we have to dismiss a case because something has gone so downhill, but we really try to avoid to do that, especially with sexual offenses, because a sexual offense really is like the height of I've lost the word, but an encroachment. I mean, it's a violation. It's a violation worse than a lot of other things. Like if your car gets broken into, that upsets you, but that isn't the same level as if you have a sexual violence perpetrated against you. And so we do take it very, very seriously. That's all.
Thank you, Abby. That was great. That was great. I will just momentarily put a plug in for TOU investigations or university investigations. One of the main differences between a criminal investigation and a university investigation is the burden of proof. Whereas in the criminal setting, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. The university setting is more likely than not, or the preponderance of the evidence. So 50% plus a feather. So a little less difficult burden to reach, a little bit less to reach. So
if I could say one more thing, I have recently worked with the TLU investigators on a sexual assault case, and I will say I thought they did an amazing job, and very thorough, very communicative. That's what you like to see during the intake process, is having that level of communication between your prosecutor and your law enforcement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, thank you, Abby. Oh, Hannah, you want to jump in there? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Abby one question. If you could tell survivors one good reason to pursue cooperating with law enforcement and prosecutors and pressing charges against their offenders, what would it be?
So everyone is different, but I think from experience, when you go through this whole process, you come out the other end after a guilty verdict, it's cathartic. And it's just a way to, you're never going to leave it behind you, but to feel like you've made a difference for yourself. And like I said, everyone's different. Everyone deals with things in different ways, but a lot of, and I say especially women that I've worked with, they go through it all. They get that final protective order. They go and they testify in that trial, and the jury says guilty. It's like a vindication that they were right in standing up for themselves and saying, no, you can't treat me this way. And having, the prosecutor stand by your side the whole time is good, but having a jury or a judge say, yeah, you were, right to come forth, to make the report, to follow it through, to testify. And now we vindicate that in you. For a lot of the women that I've been through this process with, they do feel, I don't know what the right word is, but I guess vindicated. It's just a good word. They are able to kind of say, okay.
Would it be validated?
Validated. Thank you. That's validated. That's now I'm going to start afresh because I've closed this chapter of my life. Others, because it takes so long, it's harder to feel that way. But, and we can never make a guarantee of a jury verdict. You never know what a jury will do. But just being able sometimes to look that offender in the eye in the courtroom and say, you hurt me and it's not okay, is just very cleansing.
And then one follow-up question. What would you say to those who either don't receive that, the survivors in cases where the offender doesn't receive the guilty verdict, and those who maybe just choose not to go the legal route with their cases? What would you say to them?
Right. And once again, everyone's different. And, we're never going to force somebody, to go make the report or anything if they aren't ready. We're always going to encourage you to make that step, and go that route. But some people just aren't ready, and they'll never be ready. And what I would say to them is, even if you aren't ready to get law enforcement involved, to get the criminal justice system involved, go to the family violence shelter, go seek out a counselor, like figure out a way that you do feel comfortable dealing with it on your own, because bottling it up might be an easy quick fix, but long term it's not. And so find someone that you can work through it with. As far as the not guilty jury verdicts, that sucks. But the same thing, see the counselor, see, the professional that can help you work through that and process that, because just because the criminal justice system didn't manage to convict that person and send them to jail or anything doesn't mean that you're less worthy of being a whole person, that you don't deserve to be whole again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Good questions, Hannah. So we will send it over to Cherie.
Hello, my name is Cherie. I'm the victim coordinator for the felony division. My role as a victim coordinator is to assist the victims through the court process. Once the defendant has been indicted, I mail paperwork to the victim. In the paperwork, it's a victim impact statement packet and a crime victims compensation packet. I assist them in filling out the packet. We always ask that they fill out the victim impact statement prior to sentencing, because that document's going to follow wherever the individual goes. If they get probation, if they get prison time, it'll go to the probation department or the prison. And once they complete the crime victims compensation application, I forward that on to the Attorney General's office along with their medical bills. So hopefully they can get reimbursed for whatever they've paid out of pocket. There's also a form for rent and relocation if the victim chooses to move out of the area. the Attorney General can pay up to $1,800 for them for deposit or for rent. I also set them up for the VINE program. And the VINE program is to notify them when the individual gets released from jail, or notifies them of the court notices. And I also mail out court notices to the victims. And if they choose to attend the court hearings, I sit with them in the court hearings. On trial cases, I sit with them during the trial. When they're testifying, I'm there with them in the courtroom. When the verdict comes in, I'm there with them when the verdict comes in. We also have our investigators walk them into the office and into the courtroom just for their safety. And we escort them in and out of the courtroom. Our office makes sure that the victims feel safe during the court proceedings at all times. And if anybody has any questions, they can contact me at the county attorney's office.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, you anticipated one of my questions. I was going to ask you about VINE later, so good job, good job. We will now turn it over to Michelle.
So I'm Michelle Meehan with the Guadalupe County Children's Advocacy Center, and we're involved with the kid cases when there's been sexual assault against our kiddos. That is one of the main areas that we help out with, but we also provide forensic interview services for sexual abuse, severe physical abuse, and witnesses to crime. So it could be, drugs, family violence, robbery, homicide, anything that our kiddos have witnessed and investigators need to talk to them. We can help out with that interview. And it's really to just provide kids a safe space and opportunity to talk about any concerns that they have for themselves or for others. And if there are things that need to be looked into, then the investigators will take that information and do it and look into what needs to be looked into. So while the interviews are going on with our kiddos, we have family advocates who work with our non-offending caregivers who come over with the children. And in that space, they talk with the caregiver, explain typically what they can expect during the process, during the course of the investigation, afterwards, and be with them throughout all of those steps. And also help get them linked up to services, whether it's counseling or crime victims or VINE or any of the other services. Our advocates help get them to those resources and either assist them with them or link them to the agency so they can carry on from there. We also do provide free counseling to all of our kids and clients, which is sometimes really hard to come across. And so that is one service that I am absolutely proud of, and that we can offer that service to our kids and families. So we also do community education because, we just need to bring awareness and bring attention to why we all have a job, unfortunately. And it is a community effort. And so getting out there and talking to all different types of groups, just, it's a very difficult field that we all work. And we come in contact with victims who never dreamed of being a victim ever in their lives. It was someone else's decision and choice that brought them to our doors. And so we really do work our best to be with them throughout that process, whatever it needs to be for them. And however long they want us to stay in touch with them, whether it's through the whole entire prosecution process or after they've seen us for the interview. It really is their call. So that's a little bit about our response.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Before I open it up to questions, and again, we'll take questions either through the Q&A feature or through the chat. You can do it privately to me if you'd like to have your question be anonymous. But I wanted to ask Michelle a question, and maybe Abby, you can weigh in on this too, but what age does somebody age out of your services? So in other words, I think there's sometimes confusion in Texas between age of consent and then what age, for instance, is the age for child pornography. So there, what ages is your agency mainly focused with?
So for us at the Advocacy Center, we provide services to kids ages 2 to 17, but also adults who fall into that mental age range as well if they've got a disability. And honestly, once they're a client, they're always a client. So if something comes up later on for them in life, if we're not able to get them in with our services, we're going to help refer them to an agency that can get them in. So for us, I don't feel like we stop, but our target population is kids 2 to 17.
Okay. Okay.
And
Abby, am I right about that distinction between those two things? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's, I think, some confusion with the Texas law. So you have, if you're 16 and under is a child, at 17 we say is the age of consent. However, all the pornography laws are written for under 18. And so you might have a 17-year-old who can legally consent to have sex, but not to be videoed and, spread on the internet and stuff. And then as far as, working the cases, it all, we look at not necessarily the age the person is now, but when the offense occurred. And so with a lot, especially the kiddos and such, that it's been a while maybe that until they're willing to, tell somebody about what's been happening to them. And so you are looking at the age at the time that things occurred.
And one thing that I always like to stress to our employees here, and our students too, I suppose, but it comes up more with employees. It is Texas state law that anyone who has knowledge of an act of abuse, whether it be sexual abuse or other abuse, with someone under 18 is required to report that to law enforcement. That is the law. And I find that's a law that's not known in a lot of circles, So, okay, I will start us off with the question while I wait for someone to come in here. What can the school systems do? Seguin ISD, Navarro ISD, TLU, what can we do better to work with your agencies, to coordinate with your agencies better? And I'll just open that up to anyone who'd like to answer that.
I'll jump in. I would say just the education aspect, bringing representatives from the different agencies into the schools to give presentations and bring that information to the kids. Because I think especially when you're talking about high school and middle school and even in college, a lot of people don't know what is illegal, what isn't, what they can get help with, what services are available. So I think just on the education front, getting that knowledge to the kids is a huge first step.
Great answer.
Anybody else want to chime in on that one?
I think to add to that, if they are aware of something going on, definitely report it to either the abuse hotline or to law enforcement so that intervention can be provided to the kid and family. Because unfortunately, this is something that's going to happen. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys, I think, is going to experience a sexual abuse by their 18th birthday in some form or capacity. And so this is something that is going on. And so when we are aware of it, it's not to sweep it under the rug because, oh, this can't happen here, or this person couldn't have done it. It's like, okay, we have a child who is saying something, we need to believe them, make a report, and get the interventions to them.
Mm-hmm. And I think going along with that, just normalize talking about it.
Yeah, I think the reason why, we do programs like this, and the reason why, I'm on campus and out in the community and that kind of thing, we want to have these conversations more frequently. They're not comfortable conversations, but I think there's something to be said for getting the information out to people, not just in a way that explains the response process, but also the prevention pieces too. A large part of the work that I do on the TLU campus is prevention education. So I'm giving presentations about what healthy relationship dynamics look like, and what healthy communication looks like, and what consent looks like, things like that. And so, when we have these conversations, it's not to say, oh, there's this dreadful thing among us, and there's nothing we can do about it. This is to show the community that we are a united front, and that as professionals in the field, it's not only our responsibility, but it's our passion to serve survivors and to really make sure that the entire process is streamlined for them. Um, Anna was talking earlier about protective orders, and she mentioned it can be a lengthy process. These cases can take a long time sometimes. But what's really cool is how all of our agencies kind of work together to make sure that it can be as seamless as possible, right? So like on Tuesday, we were talking about what the initial report and forensic exams might look like, and how an advocate meets the survivor at the forensic examination, or we can meet the survivor at the law enforcement report. And the thing is, we get that opportunity to safety plan with them, and to do danger assessments, and to connect them with the counseling services, or with the child advocacy center if it's a child. We have our crisis hotline where somebody can call and, they can get advice. They can talk to an advocate at any hour. And I think, once an advocate meets that survivor, that first interaction, it's the same as these other agencies. That advocate sticks with that survivor throughout the process from start to finish, no matter what it looks like. So it might just look like getting them connected with counseling and prevention education courses, or what we call peer support, and maybe safety planning, or working working with their children, that kind of thing. But another case might look like a full legal advocacy service. So we have a legal advocate, her name is Kelsey, and she works very closely with Anna in the prosecutor's office. And what she can do is she can kind of contact the prosecutor's office, or she can contact Renee and talk to law enforcement and check on the status of cases along the way. We can also assist with filling out those crime victims compensation applications, and make sure that, if someone is in financial need, that those needs are being met in some form or fashion, or we're connecting them with resources to meet those needs. And so it's not just black and white. It's not just, either you take the legal route or you don't. Either you have support or you don't. It's undeniable you'll have support the entire way through. And everyone on this call, including all of our team members that are not here, we're here to make that path as smooth and seamless as possible. So that was a lot, but I'll pass it on to whoever has the next question.
And I'll just second that. The folks participating here tonight represent many other people who are also doing this work as well, and so we're definitely indebted to each of them.
Before we go to the next question, I just want to, as far as like the school districts, in 2019 we started a program called, or we didn't start it, but we started teaching it. It's called Rad Kids, and it's this personal empowerment and safety program that we do with the kiddos. And it's been in Seguin ISD, Navarro, Marion, and a few of our private schools. And so that program teaches kids how to be safe in all different types of scenarios, and what to do if they don't feel safe, to get to a safe zone. Tell someone until they listen to you. Keep telling, and that if something does happen to them, it's not their fault, and they can tell someone. And so with the school districts being on board with that was just amazing. And COVID put a little damper in it, but we're going to get back to it. And they took it on this year, and the coaches have actually been teaching it. So it has continued. And so our kids are learning what they can do to help keep themselves safe and others, and what to do when there is an unsafe situation. So education programs like that are extremely beneficial. So
Hannah and I were on a call earlier today with Judge Lagore, Kirsten Lagore, who formerly was with Seguin ISD and was part of that program. And so we heard a little bit about that earlier today. So that's great that you mentioned that. Yeah, yeah. You know, we've talked about that all of the agencies here work very closely with each other. But what other agencies and organizations are out there that you also work with, either locally or also statewide?
Well, I mean, I guess someone said the AG's office with crime victims, you know, all our law enforcement partners. Renee is from Seguin PD, but just in Guadalupe County, I think we have 8 or 10 different agencies operating, and then the constables' offices. So all of those people, you have even I'd say different prosecutors' offices. You know, we all work closely together when we have defendants in common. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we're talking about the shelter, there's a lot of other agencies we're in contact with. You know, we've got all of the different prosecutors' offices throughout the different counties that we serve, all the law enforcement agencies, and then you have, you know, other resources like places like Bluebonnet Trails, community health clinics, other homeless shelters, family violence shelters, substance abuse programs. There's places like Connections in New Braunfels, youth counseling agencies. You know, we try to kind of have our hand in all the cookie jars, I guess.
Well, and the hospitals too are huge front line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So really, you know, I think the point of this community collaboration is to really make sure that, you know, regardless of the path that someone chooses to go after their assault has occurred, you know, whether they choose the legal route or the clinical route or the emotional, psychological route, you know, we want to encourage that healing. And we want survivors to know that first and foremost, there is someone in their corner and there is someone that says, I believe you. Because I think, you know, there are a lot of different outcomes for these types of cases, and they're never ideal. You know, no one wants to have to go through trauma. No one wants to have to deal with the system, right? And so, and all of the components of that system. And so I think our goal as a community is to really just let them know that, hey, we recognize that this is an imperfect world and that you didn't deserve to have this happen to you, and we believe you. And, you know, whether it takes one of us or 10 of us, we're going to help you heal and overcome. And we're here to support you no matter what that looks like.
And we also work with all the different law enforcements and also the Department of Family and Protective Services, both with their investigations unit, but also their family base and conservatorship, all of them, communities and schools, and then Common Thread. And they focus on providing advocates to trafficking victims 22 and younger. And so they have a bunch of resources for that population as well. And so there's a lot out there. We're all here to help. So
yeah, so I mentioned some of the prevention education courses that we do, and that actually is a kind of a good segue when there's any type of sexual violence or domestic violence in a home and law enforcement is contacted, there's typically going to be a child protective services report generated and an investigation started. And so usually when CPS gets involved, the survivor in that situation or the parent of the survivor might be required to complete a list of services. And among the many services they might be required to complete is a domestic violence prevention program or a protective parenting program. And our agency offers both of those courses, and we teach them one-on-one. And those are not just courses that can be completed as a requirement. They can also be completed as a voluntary choice. You can sign up for those services. All of the services that the shelter provides, in shelter, non-residentially, and on campus at TLU, all of those services are completely free and confidential. And so what we want to do is make sure that regardless of what agencies we're in contact with or what moves we're making on behalf of the survivor, we want to make sure that they're streamlined, and we want to kind of take those tasks off of the shoulders of the survivor. So rather than having the survivor call 6 different people, I'm going to do that for her or him. I'm going to make those moves kind of behind the scenes, and we're going to work together as a community so that the survivor can feel supported and doesn't have to do everything on their own.
And to like just briefly touch on that, that's very true. Me and Cassie work very close together, especially because she does assist with a lot of the protective orders. If the survivor decides to start off with the family violence shelter, which is completely fine, Kelsey will help them with the application process. So if they're not ready to get to our office yet, that's perfectly fine. She will always let me know, hey, this is kind of coming down the pipeline. This is what to look out for. And I can start preparing everything that we need so that when the survivor is ready to get to our office, because eventually I would like to have that conversation with them and just hear them out. They know that the shelter has already done their part. Now it's up to us to keep going forward. So you're right about streamlining it. We do, we want to keep it as easy and more comfortable as possible, so they don't have to go to 10 different places or have to call 10 different numbers, because at that point, sometimes I feel like if we do that, we've already lost them. They're like, I don't want to do this. I'm tired of calling numbers and calling people. If we can just kind of not get it done, but help them, just on the straight and narrow, I think that makes them feel, more empowered and to keep going forward, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, all the way through, we want to have that trauma-informed approach, right? So, we all understand that trauma varies. The experience is different for everyone, and the aftermath and what manifests thereafter is different for everyone. And so, whether it's court accompaniment to file the police report, just giving Anna a call or giving Cherie a call to see where things are at, or whatever it may be. We want to really show survivors that it's that reporting what's happened to you doesn't have to be as daunting and lonely and difficult as it might seem in the movies, or as it might seem having just freshly experienced trauma. We're here for you, and we're going to continue to speak on your behalf and to listen to you first and foremost, and we're going to do our very, very best to make sure that you are as safe as possible. That's our first and foremost priority.
That's an excellent way to kind of wrap that up, I think, as well, Hannah. Thank you. We are getting close to the end of our time here, so I thought what I would do to end this is just go around and give everybody just a chance to say just one last thing, maybe one thing you'd like to leave people with, one thing you'd like them to know, or just sort of a summing up of what you had to say tonight. So I'll start, and then I'll just call on you. But I just would like everyone to know that, we have 3 victims, crime victims coordinators on here in Cherie, Anna, and Renee. You can reach out to any of them, and they will be able to help you. If they're not the right person, they will get you to the right person. On campus, you have my office. I have everybody's phone number, everybody's email. I can get you to where you need to be. And of course, Hannah at the shelter, they also can get you where you need to be. So that's my closing thought. Michelle.
We're here to help, and we're here. There's help, there's resources, there's people who are passionate about being here when in the darkest times, to get you back to brighter light, and whatever that needs to be for you, because it's different for everybody after they've experienced trauma. And so we're here with you along that journey.
Thank you, Michelle. Renee.
Yes, sir. As a victim, you have the right to be treated with dignity, respect, and sensitivity. And we all understand that it's difficult to reach out for help, but just remember that there are advocates out there, liaisons that are there for you and willing to help you through the process and listen to you.
Very good. Thank you. Cherie?
Yes, I just want to let everybody know that I'm here to help you through the court process and that you're not alone. We are all here to help any way we can.
Great. Thank you. Anna?
To kind of go with Cherie, our office is here to help. Our goal is to make sure that the survivor knows that they are safe. Our goal is to keep them safe and that they are not alone in this. And if I don't know the answer, I will always find out and get back to you on that.
Great, thank you. Abby.
Okay. I would just say for a lot of people, the criminal justice system can seem like a daunting thing. It can be scary. But we are like there with you every step of the way. Like Anna and Cherie said, we do our best to make it a painless as possible process. And I know not everyone is always ready to make that report to be able to tell their story, but we do encourage you, at the very least, seek the counseling, seek the help that'll help you work through it. But we always encourage, make the report with law enforcement, let it be investigated. It's our best way to protect you and potentially the next person in line as well.
Thank you, Abby. And Hannah.
I would just like to say, I think whether it's preventing or healing, we have to be equipped with the tools that are necessary to grow and to heal and to recover from these things. We have to be equipped with the tools that are necessary to prevent these things from continuing to happen. And, I just hope that anyone listening or watching tonight understands that, we've all chosen to be in a position to provide you with those tools, and we're going to do our very best to do that.
Thank you, Hannah. Well, that will do it for us for tonight. I want to thank all of our panelists for being available tonight and doing such a great job. Y'all were awesome, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you to those who attended in person tonight, and thank you for those of you who see this recorded in the future. Thank you all for tuning in as well. We will conclude with that and have a great evening. And again, thank you all for what you do to make this place a safer and more inclusive place.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you guys for having us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.